The council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Trell collapsed onto the floor, his chitinous armor smoking from multiple puncture wounds. I stared at the scene before me, my tentacles curling involuntarily in shock. The human delegation had not moved from their seats. They did not need to. Their weapons had done the work from across the room. What manner of sorcery is this? High Counselor Vaughn stammered, his 6 eyes darting between the fallen ambassador and the calm faces of the humans. The leader of the human contingent, a woman who had introduced herself as Captain Ellen Cross, slowly rose from her chair. In her hands she held what appeared to be an ancient weapon, all carved wood and bent metal, with a string pulled taut between 2 curved arms. Not a single energy signature, not a trace of plasma, not even the faintest hint of explosive propellant. No sorcery, Counselor, Alina said, her voice carrying that peculiar mixture of politeness and threat that humans seem to have perfected. Just physics, very old physics. I should explain how we arrived at this moment. My name is Krell, and I serve as the junior diplomatic observer for the Galactic Assembly. 3 cycles ago, when humanity first petitioned for membership, we thought them backward, primitive. Their technology lagged centuries behind ours. Their ships were slow, clunky things that barely qualified as interstellar. But the Assembly, in its infinite wisdom, decided to grant them provisional status. Then came the weapons inspection. The Treaty of Harmonious Stars, drafted 12,000 years ago, was explicit. All member species must surrender their projectile weapons. The reasons were sound. Plasma rifles could be calibrated for stun, energy beams could be modulated, but bullets, missiles, kinetic rounds, those things killed. Period. No second chances, no room for mercy. Humanity agreed to the treaty. Without hesitation, they surrendered. Their guns, their cannons, their rockets, every firearm on every human world was collected, catalogued, and ceremonially destroyed. The Assembly celebrated another violent species choosing the path of enlightenment. We were fools. The first incident occurred on the mining colony of Vespar 9. A human security officer named Thomas Reed stopped a Krellian smuggling ring using what he called a longbow. The investigation report described a weapon that launched wooden shafts with enough force to pierce standard body armor at 30 m when pressed. Reed explained that technically it was not a gun. It used no gunpowder, no chemical propellant, no explosives of any kind. The Assembly examined the weapon and concluded after much debate that while primitive and concerning, bows and arrows fell into a legal gray area. The treaty specifically banned firearms and explosive devices. Simple mechanical tension that was not explicitly covered. We assumed, Counselor Vaughn had said at the time, that no species would be barbaric enough to rely on such crude instruments in an age of directed energy. Vaughn was learning the price of assumptions today as he watched his personal security team advance on the human delegation with plasma rifles set to maximum stun. Alina did not move. Neither did her companions, but I noticed with a creeping sense of dread that each human had similar weapons now visible. Some held bows like Alina's. Others had smaller versions, compact things that fit in one hand. One particularly large human in the back row held something that looked like a bow, lying sideways with a stock and a Trigger mechanism. I would not recommend that, counselor. Elena said calmly. You see, when you outlawed guns, you created a rather interesting problem for us. Humans have been hunting, fighting, and defending ourselves for roughly 200,000 years. Guns are only about 1,000 years old. We had to get creative for a very long time before that. The security team stopped looking to Vaughn for guidance. The High Counselor's skin had shifted to pale yellow, a sign of severe distress in his species. You dare threaten the council, he managed to croak out. Threaten? Elena's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Counselor, your ambassador threatened to have our delegation arrested and our colony rights revoked because we refused to hand over our mining operations to his corporate sponsors. He pulled a weapon first. My colleague Marcus here simply defended our right to speak freely in this chamber. She gestured to a dark-skinned human male who sat casually in his chair, his bow resting across his knees, a thin string connected to his fingertip. He had not even stood up to take his shot. Ambassador Trell will survive, Elena continued. The arrow pierced his shoulder, avoiding all vital organs. If we wanted him dead, he would be dead. Instead, he is simply learning the same lesson the rest of you are about to learn. And what lesson is that? I found myself asking, surprising even myself by speaking up. Elena's gaze shifted to me, and I felt the full weight of human attention. It was unsettling. Predators' eyes. I realized every human had them. Forward-facing, calculating, sharp. That, when you take away one tool, creative species find another. She replied, you wanted us to be peaceful. We agreed. You wanted our guns. We gave them up. But you never asked us to stop being human, and being human means we adapt. We overcome, and we absolutely refuse to be victims. The chamber doors burst open. 20 more security personnel flooded in, weapons raised. The human delegation did not even flinch. Elena simply sighed. Before this gets messy, she said, reaching slowly into her jacket. Perhaps we should discuss the actual treaty language, shall we? She pulled out a data pad and tossed it toward Vaughn. It clattered on the floor in front of him. One of his aides picked it up nervously. Section 12, paragraph 7, subsection 4. Elena recited from memory. Prohibited weapons include, and I quote, firearms utilizing chemical propellants, explosive devices, nuclear or anti-atom weapons, and biological agents. Nowhere in the treaty is there mention of bows, crossbows, slings, atolls, or any other mechanically powered projectile system. This is absurd, Vaughn sputtered. The spirit of the treaty clearly indicates all killing weapons should be surrendered. Oh, you want to talk about spirit versus letter of the law? Elena's smile turned predatory. How interesting, because by that logic, plasma rifles should also be banned. They kill quite efficiently when set above stun, clears throat, and those lovely force pikes your guards carry. I have seen the casualty reports from the Dendara incident. 23 protesters beaten to death with non-lethal weapons. Shall we discuss spirit now, counselor? The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. Medical personnel had finally arrived and were tending to Trell, who was conscious and groaning dramatically. The arrow had indeed missed anything vital. Deliberately, I realized the shot had come from across a large chamber, yet struck exactly where intended. You cannot possibly believe, Vaughn said. his voice trembling with either rage or fear that the assembly will allow you to arm yourselves with primitive weapons, while the rest of us adhere to civilized standards. Civilized standards, Alina repeated, her tone dripping with acid. Tell me, counselor, how civilized was it when your security forces massacred that mining crew on Talis 4 because they refused to abandon their legal claims? Oh wait, the official report called it a tragic accident involving equipment malfunction. How convenient that all the equipment malfunctioned simultaneously, creating wounds consistent with close-range plasma fire. Vor's color shifted again, this time to a deep purple. I knew that color. It meant he was cornered and considering violent options. Captain Cross, I interjected quickly. Perhaps there is room for negotiation here. Surely we can find a middle ground that satisfies both human security concerns and council protocols. Alina looked at me for a long moment. What is your name? Observer Krello. Junior Diplomatic Observer. 3 cycles. In service. Tell me, Krello, do you know why humans took to the stars? She did not wait for my answer, because we got tired of being told what we could and could not do on our own world. We got tired of the strong dominating the weak. We got tired of rigged systems and corrupt officials and treaties written by people who never intend to follow them. We came to space hoping to find something better. Instead, we found the same old patterns wearing different faces. She walked slowly toward the center of the chamber. None of the security personnel tried to stop her. I suspected they had finally realized that dozens of human fingers rested on bowstrings, ready to turn the room into a killing ground in seconds. So here is what is going to happen, Alina announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Humanity will continue to use whatever weapons we deem necessary for our protection, so long as they comply with the exact wording of the treaties we sign. If you have a problem with bows and arrows, then amend the treaty, submit it to full assembly vote, let every member species weigh in on whether mechanically powered projectile weapons should be added to the banned list. You know that will take years, Vaughn protested weakly. Yes, Alina agreed, years during which human colonies will be protected by humans, not by the Assembly's selective enforcement and convenient blindness. Years during which we will mine our minerals, build our stations, and establish our territory without interference from corrupt officials looking for bribes. This is extortion. No, counselor, this is self-determination. There is a difference, one you might want to learn. I watched the standoff continue, my mind racing through possible outcomes. The humans had played this perfectly. They had followed the letter of the law while completely undermining its intent. They had weaponized loopholes, and they had done it in a way that made the council look either foolish or corrupt, depending on how one viewed the situation. Very well, Vaughn finally said, his body language screaming defeat. The council will take your proposal under advisement. In the meantime, I suppose we must acknowledge that your weapons, however distasteful, are not technically in violation of current treaty language. Distasteful, Alina repeated with a laugh. Counselor, you have no idea. May I show you something? Before anyone could object, she raised her bow and pointed toward the far wall where a decorative tapestry hung depicting the founding of the Galactic Assembly, with a fluid motion that spoke of countless hours of practice. She drew the bowstring back to her cheek and released. The arrow flew across the chamber in a blur. It struck the wall next to the tapestry. The metal arrow had embedding itself a full 3 cm into solid granite. The sound of the impact echoed like a gunshot. 50 m range, Alina said conversationally, as if she had not just demonstrated the ability to kill anyone in the room at will. Accurate to within 2 cm, silent until impact, no energy signature to detect or trace. And the ammunition she pulled another arrow from the quiver at her hip can be manufactured using materials available on any habitable planet: wood, metal, feathers, stone if necessary. Skilled bore can produce a functional weapon in less than a week using hand tools. She tossed the arrow to Vaughn. He caught it reflexively, then stared at the object as if it were a venomous creature. You people, he whispered, are absolutely insane. No, Alina corrected gently, we are survivors. There is a difference. And if there is one thing humans do better than any other species I have met, it is survive. You can work with us or you can work against us, but you cannot disarm us, not completely, not ever, because even if you take away every weapon we own, we will make new ones from sticks and stones if necessary. That is what it means to be human. The medical team finished loading Trell onto a stretcher as they carried him past the human delegation. He managed to lift his head and fix Alina with a baleful glare. This is not over, he hissed. No, Alina agreed, it is just beginning, but now at least we understand each other. You know we will not be pushed around, and we know that you will keep trying. That is fine. We love a good challenge. As the doors closed behind the medical team, Counselor Vaughn slumped in his chair. His aide leaned in to whisper something, but he waved the creature away. Krell, he said tiredly, you will prepare a full report on this incident, include recommendations for how we might accommodate humanity's unique interpretation of our weapons treaties. Yes, Counselor, I replied, already dreading the task ahead. The human delegation began filing out of the chamber. Alina paused at the door and looked back at us. Oh, one more thing, she said. That demonstration I just gave, that was with a traditional recurve bow. Wait until you see what our engineers have been working on. Compound bows with pulleys and cams, compound crossbows with scopes and cranking mechanisms. We even have one design that uses a combination of springs and gears to generate enough force to punch through starship hull plating, all mechanical, all perfectly legal under current treaty language. She smiled that predatory smile again. Sleep well, counselors. We will be in touch regarding our mining rights. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that satisfies everyone eventually. Then she was gone, her team following like a pack of predators returning to their den after a successful hunt. Vor and I sat in silence for several minutes. Finally he spoke. What have we brought into the assembly, Krell? I thought about the question carefully before answering. Apex predators who learned to build starships, Counselor, and we thought we could civilize them by taking away their guns. Can they be stopped? I do not know, I admitted, but I suspect the real question is whether they should be stopped. They are right about one thing. The assembly is corrupt. We do have selective enforcement. We do favor The powerful over the weak, maybe. We need someone who refuses to play by those rules. That is dangerously close to seditious. Thinking observer. Yes, counselor, but it is also the truth. Vaughn was quiet for another moment. Then he did something I did not expect. He laughed. It was a bitter, exhausted sound, but it was laughter nonetheless. Do you know what the worst part is? Krell, they are going to win. Clears throat. Not today, perhaps not even this year, but eventually they will win because they are right. We took away their guns and thought we had neutered them. Instead, we just reminded them that they conquered their entire planet. Long before guns were ever invented, we reminded them exactly what they are capable of when pressed into a corner. What do? I asked. We adapt. Vaughn said heavily, just like they do. We learn, we change, or we get left behind. Those are our options now. As I left the council chamber to begin my report, I passed a window overlooking the human quarter of the station. I could see members of the delegation gathering in what appeared to be a celebration. They were laughing, drinking, and several were demonstrating their archery technique to an appreciative audience. One of them noticed me watching. Marcus, the one who had shot Trell. He raised his glass in a mock salute, that same predatory smile on his face. I turned away and continued to my office, a single thought echoing in my mind. The humans had not come to play by our rules, they had come to rewrite them, and we had just learned that lesson in the most painful way possible. The age of guns had ended. The age of steel and string had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the council chamber incident, I found myself aboard a human colony ship heading toward the disputed territories of the outer fringe. Counselor Vaughn had assigned me as official observer to the human expansion effort, claiming it would help me understand their methods and motivations. I suspected he simply wanted me as far from the assembly as possible while he dealt with the political nightmare that Elena Cross had created. The ship was called the Ranger, and it was exactly what I had come to expect from humanity. Functional, ugly, and far more dangerous than it appeared. The hull showed signs of modification with unusual protrusions and reinforced sections that did not match standard colony vessel design. Observer Krell, a voice called from behind me. I turned to find a man approaching, tall and lean, with sun-withered skin and keen gray eyes. I'm Commander Jack Reeves, head of colony security. Captain Cross asked me to show you around before we reach the fringe. I appreciate that, Commander, I replied, noting the weapon slung across his back. It was larger than the bows I had seen in the council chamber, with a more complex design featuring wheels at each end and what appeared to be multiple strings. Is that one of the compound bows, Captain Cross mentioned? Jack grinned and unslung the weapon with practiced ease. This beauty? Yeah, this is a Titan Mark 7 compound bow, pull weight of 120 lb. But the cam system means I only hold about 20 lb at full draw, effective range of 200 m with broadhead arrows, 300 with specialized penetrator rounds. He handed it to me carefully. The weapon was heavier than I expected, built from some lightweight alloy that felt alien. In my tentacles, the engineering was remarkable, all precisely machined parts, working in perfect harmony. We also have these, Jack continued, pulling a smaller weapon from a holster. At his hip, it looked like a miniature crossbow barely larger than a plasma pistol. Hand crossbow, 60 lb draw. Accurate to 30 m, perfect for close quarters or emergency backup. Every colonist over the age of 16 is trained on these. You arm your civilians, I asked, unable to hide my shock. Of course we do, Jack replied as if the answer were obvious. The fringe is dangerous, pirates, hostile wildlife, territorial disputes with other species who do not recognize our land claims. Our people need to defend themselves. Besides, an armed population is a polite population, makes raiders think twice before attacking. He led me through the ship, pointing out various modifications. The cargo bay had been converted into an armory and workshop. Dozens of humans worked at benches, crafting arrows, stringing bows, and testing equipment. The smell of wood, metal, and some kind of adhesive filled the air. We produce about 500 arrows per day, Jack explained. Multiple types. Broadheads for hunting and anti-personnel work, bodkin points for armor penetration, explosive tips for structural damage or anti-vehicle use. Explosive tips. I felt my skin shift color involuntarily. How is that not a violation of the treaty? Jack's grin widened. Because the arrow itself is not explosive. We just attach a small shaped charge to the tip. The projectile is mechanical. The payload is separate, technically compliant. Our lawyers are very good at their jobs. We continued the tour, and each new revelation made me more uneasy. The humans had not simply adopted bows as a workaround. They had industrialized them, weaponized them in ways I had never imagined possible. They had ballistas mounted on retractable turrets, capable of launching meter-long bolts with enough force to damage light spacecraft. They had repeating crossbows that could fire 30 bolts per minute. They even had something they called a war bow, a massive weapon nearly 2 m tall that required incredible strength to draw but could reportedly punch through armored bulkheads. Why go to all this effort? I asked Jack as we stood on the observation deck, watching the stars blur past. Surely it would be easier to simply negotiate for weapons exemptions or develop better energy weapons within treaty limitations. Jack was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. You ever hear the human saying, give a man a fish, he eats. For a day, teach a man to fish, he eats. For life, I have encountered it in my cultural studies. Yes, well, guns are like giving us fish. They are manufactured. They require specific ammunition, specific parts, specific maintenance. They are dependent on supply chains and industrial infrastructure. But bows, he patted his compound bow affectionately. Bows can be made anywhere by anyone with basic materials and knowledge. They are independent, self-sufficient. That matters to us. There is more to it than that. I pressed. This feels personal. Jack nodded slowly. You are right, it is personal. See, when the assembly made us give up our guns, a lot of humans saw it as the galaxy trying to pacify us, trying to make us dependent on systems we did not control, trying to turn us into soft, compliant citizens who would do as we were told. But that is not who we are. We are stubborn, contrary, and we absolutely hate being told we cannot do something. He turned to face me directly. So when you took our guns, we did not see it as moving toward a more civilized future. We saw it as a challenge, and humans love challenges. We thrive on them. You basically dared us to find another way, and by God we did. Now we have weapons that are just as effective, maybe more so in some situations, and you cannot say a damn thing about it because we followed your rules exactly. That seems remarkably spiteful, I observed. Maybe, Jack admitted with a shrug, but spite is a powerful motivator, and honestly, I prefer my bow to any gun I ever carried. It is quieter, has no energy signature. The ammunition is reusable and easy to manufacture, and it never runs out of charge or overheats. Plus, there is something satisfying about it, more personal. You feel every shot in a way you do not with guns. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Commander Reeves, Observer Krell, please report to the bridge. We are approaching the fringe colony site, the bridge of. The Ranger was cramped but efficient. Captain Alina Cross stood at the center, studying multiple displays showing the system we were entering. She acknowledged our arrival with a brief nod. We have a problem, she announced. Without preamble, long-range sensors are picking up 3 vessels in orbit around our colony world, Clarvy Merchant Marine, according to their transponders. But their weapon signatures suggest otherwise, more likely pirates or privateers. Can we avoid engagement? I asked, hopeful. Despite knowing the answer, not without abandoning the colony site, Alina replied, and we are not doing that. We have been through proper channels, filed all the necessary claims, and paid all the required fees. That planet is ours, legally and legitimately. If the Clarvians want it, they can file a counterclaim through proper assembly procedures. And if they choose violence instead, I knew I was stating the obvious, but protocol required me to document everything. Then they will learn the same lesson Ambassador Trell learned, Alina said coldly. We do not start fights, but we absolutely finish them. The Ranger dropped out of faster than light travel at the system's edge, giving us a clear view of the contested planet. It was beautiful, a green and blue marble that reminded me of Earth in the historical records. The 3 Clarvian vessels hung in low orbit, clearly visible on our screens. Hail them, Alina ordered. Let them know we are here on legitimate colony business and request they clear the orbital space. The communications officer complied. Moments later, a Clarvian face appeared on the main screen. The creature's scales were scarred and discolored, marking it as a veteran of conflicts. Its eyes held no diplomacy, only calculation. Human vessel, the Clarvian rasped. This system is under protection of the Clarvian Trade Collective. You will divert to another destination or face consequences. Protection, Alina's voice dripped with contempt. You mean extortion? This world is unclaimed free territory under assembly law, and we have filed proper colonization papers. You have no legal authority here. We have 3 ships and superior firepower, the Clarvian replied. That is all the authority we require. You have 1 standard hour to depart. After that we open fire. The screen went dark. Alina turned to Jack with a slight smile. Commander, please prepare your teams. It seems we're going to need a practical demonstration. With pleasure, Captain, Jack replied, already heading toward the exit. Over the next hour, I watched the humans execute a plan that was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. They did not attempt to match the Clarvian ships in direct combat. Instead, they used the Ranger's small profile and enhanced, maneuvering thrusters to get close, far closer than any military vessel would dare approach. At a range of less than 500 m, the Ranger opened up with weapons I had not known existed, ballistas fired from concealed ports, launching massive bolts that stretched. Each bolt was tipped with explosive charges, magnetic grapples, or cutting heads designed to shear through hull plating. The Clarvians responded with plasma fire, but their weapons were designed for long-range engagement against other warships. At this distance, with the Ranger dancing around them like an insect, they could not get a clean lock. Meanwhile, human bolts slammed into sensor arrays, weapon mounts, and engine clusters with devastating precision. They are launching boarding pods, the tactical officer announced. Let them come, Elena said calmly. All hands prepare to repel boarders. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Show them what happens when you bring plasma rifles to a bow fight. The Clarvians breached the Ranger's hull in 3 locations. I watched through security feeds as armored pirates poured into the corridors, their plasma rifles ready. They expected to face a lightly armed crew, easy prey for their superior weapons. What they found instead was a carefully prepared killing ground. The first group entered a cargo bay that appeared empty. As they advanced cautiously, human defenders rose from behind crates and barriers. Crossbows snapped, compound bows hummed in. Suddenly the air was full of carbon fiber death. The pirates' armor designed to disperse plasma energy did absolutely nothing against physical projectiles traveling at 300 ft per second. Arrows punched through visors, found gaps in armor plating, and struck with enough force to knock armored Clarvians off their feet. The pirates tried to return fire, but the humans were too fast, too well positioned, and already moving to new cover by the time plasma bolts seared through empty air. The second boarding group fared no better. They breached into an engineering section where the humans had prepared an ambush. Heavy war bows, the kind that required 2 humans to operate, launched bolts that pierced clean through armored bodies and pinned pirates to bulkheads. Explosive-tipped arrows detonated against armor with devastating effect. Not enough to violate the technical wording of weapons treaties, but more than enough to shred anyone standing too close. The third group actually managed to push deeper into the ship before encountering resistance. They found a narrow corridor and began advancing in formation, their superior numbers and firepower giving them confidence. Then the humans collapsed the ceiling on them. It was not technically a booby trap, Jack explained to me later. It was a structural failure caused by damage sustained during boarding. The fact that humans had precisely weakened certain support struts and positioned explosive arrow tips at key stress points was purely coincidental. 15 minutes after the boarding action began, it was over. The surviving Clarvians retreated to their ships, dragging their wounded and leaving their dead behind. The Ranger's hull showed scars from plasma fire and impact damage, but the ship remained fully operational. Hail them again, Elena Clear's throat ordered, her voice betraying no emotion. Despite the violence we had just witnessed, the same scarred Clarvian appeared on screen, but his expression had changed dramatically. Fear and respect had replaced arrogance. You have made your point, human, he acknowledged. We will withdraw. No, Elena said flatly, you will do more. Then that, you will transmit a full report to the Clarvian Trade Collective, explaining exactly what happened here. You will include detailed scans of our weapons and tactics. You will make absolutely certain that every pirate, privateer, and would-be extortionist this sector knows that human colonies are not easy prey, and if we refuse. Alina gestured to Jack, who had joined her on the bridge. He held up a specialized arrow, this one tipped with what looked like a small drill bit. This is a hull breaker, Jack explained conversationally. Explosive tipped with a diamond carbide penetrator head. It is specifically designed to punch through spacecraft holes and detonate inside, causing catastrophic decompression. We have about 200 of them loaded in our forward ballistas right now, all aimed at your ships. You are welcome to test whether your hull integrity can withstand them, but I would not recommend it. The Clarvian stared at the arrow on his screen, understanding dawning in his eyes. You are insane, all of you, using such primitive weapons in space combat. Primitive weapons wielded by an advanced mind are still deadly, Alina replied. Now, are you transmitting that report? Or do we start putting holes in your ships? We will transmit, the Clarvian said quickly, but the collective will not forget this. Good, Alina said with a cold smile. That is exactly what we want. Let them remember that humans do not back down, do not give up, and will use every tool at our disposal to defend what is ours. You came here expecting soft colonists you could intimidate. Instead, you found apex predators who learned to weaponize physics itself. Spread that message far and wide. Clarvian ships withdrew within the hour. The Ranger descended to the planet's surface, and the colonization process began. I watched as hundreds of humans disembarked, carrying not just agricultural equipment and habitat modules, but also weapons. So many weapons, every adult wore a sidearm crossbow. Larger bows hung in every vehicle and building. The colony armory held enough arrows to fight a sustained conflict for months. You are expecting more trouble, I observed to Jack as we toured the initial settlement. Always expect trouble, he replied. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That is the human way. Besides, this planet has some rather large predators. According to the preliminary surveys, the colonists will need protection, even without pirate problems. That evening, as the settlement's lights began to glow against the darkening sky, Alina invited me to share a meal with the command staff. They were relaxed, now joking and laughing about the day's events with the casual attitude of people who had faced death and survived. Observer Krell, Alina said, raising a glass in my direction. You have been very quiet since the engagement. What will your report say? I considered my answer carefully. The truth that humanity has found a way to remain armed and dangerous while technically complying with every treaty provision. That your weapons, while primitive in concept, are devastatingly effective. Practice. That you are not the peaceful, compliant species the Assembly hoped to integrate. And how will the Council react? Jack asked. They will attempt to close the loopholes. I predicted they will try to amend the treaties to ban mechanical projectile weapons. They will argue that humanity's behavior violates the spirit, if not the letter, of Assembly law. Let them try, Alina said confidently. Any treaty amendment requires a majority vote from member species. We will make Sure, those species understand exactly what they are voting for. Are they voting to ban weapons that do not require industrial infrastructure? Are they voting to make smaller, less developed worlds dependent on larger powers for protection? Are they voting to give corrupt officials like Trell more power to exploit colonies without fear of resistance? She leaned forward, her predator's eyes intense. Because that is what this is really about. Krell, it was never about making the galaxy safer. It was about control, about making sure the powerful stayed powerful and the weak stayed weak. We are disrupting that system, and yes, that makes us dangerous to people who benefit from the current structure, but we are also offering something else. Hope, independence, the ability for any species, any colony, any individual to defend themselves without begging permission from distant bureaucrats. You make it sound noble, I said slowly, but you killed 14 sentients today, 14 pirates who came to our legally claimed territory with the intent to murder or enslave us. Jack corrected. 14 predators who thought humans were prey. They were wrong, and they paid the price. That is not murder. That is natural selection operating on a galactic scale. I spent another 3 weeks with the colony documenting their methods and observing their progress. The humans worked with impressive efficiency, establishing farms, mines, and infrastructure at a pace that outstripped most species. They also trained constantly with their weapons, holding competitions and drills that kept their skills sharp. On my last day, before returning to the assembly, a group of colonist children approached me. The youngest could not have been more than 8 standard years old. Each child carried a small training bow sized appropriately for their age and strength. Observer Krell, the oldest child, said, a girl of perhaps 12 with bright eyes and a confident manner. We wanted to show you what we learned this week. They lined up and at a command from their instructor drew their bows and fired at targets 30 m away. Every arrow hit the mark. The precision was remarkable for such young shooters. Why do you train children to fight? I asked their instructor, unable to hide my distress. We train children to defend themselves. The instructor corrected. There is a difference. We do not teach them to seek violence, but we refuse to leave them helpless. Every human child learns archery just like they learn mathematics and reading. It is a fundamental skill, like swimming or running. Someday when they are grown, they may never need to draw a bow in anger, but if they do need it, they will be ready. As my shuttle lifted off from the colony, carrying me back to the assembly, I looked down at the growing settlement. Humans moved between buildings, working, living, building a future, and every one of them was armed. I thought about Alelina's words about control and independence. I thought about the council's reaction, about the political storms that were certainly brewing. I thought about a future where humanity's example spread, where other species began questioning the treaties and systems that governed them. The humans had not come to play by the rules. They had come to expose how arbitrary those rules were. They had taken away the assembly's monopoly on legitimate violence and distributed it to anyone with wood, string, and determination. My report to Councillor Vaughn was exhaustive and honest. I detailed everything I had seen, every innovation, every tactical advantage the humans had discovered. I concluded with a Prediction that I knew would not be well received. Humanity cannot be controlled through conventional diplomatic pressure. I wrote, they are too independent, too creative, too willing to find alternatives to any restriction we place on them. Attempting to ban their mechanical weapons will only encourage them to develop new methods we have not imagined yet. Our only viable option is to accept them as they are and hope that their sense of justice and fairness will eventually align with assembly interest, because the alternative, attempting to suppress them by force, will result in a conflict the assembly cannot win. Vaughn summoned me to his office immediately upon receiving my report. He looked older than when I had left, the stress of the past months evident in his bearing. You truly believe we cannot stop them? He asked quietly. I know we cannot, I replied. They are already spreading their methods to other species. I have reports of 12 colony worlds adopting archery training programs. The humans are offering free instruction, free equipment, free support. They are building a network of armed independent communities that owe nothing to the Central Assembly. That sounds like revolution, Vaughn said. Darkly, perhaps it is, I agreed, or perhaps it is evolution. The Assembly has grown complacent, corrupt in many ways. The humans are forcing us to confront that. We can adapt and reform, or we can cling to our failing systems and watch them crumble. Those are our only choices now. Vaughn stood and walked to his window, staring out at the assembly complex. Below, when they first applied for membership, I thought them primitive. Backward, I pied them for their slow technology and their violent history. Now I wonder if we are the primitive ones. We built a civilization on centralized power and controlled violence. They built theirs on distributed strength and individual capability. Which approach will survive longer? History suggests that flexible systems outlast rigid ones, I offered. Then we had better start learning flexibility, Bourne said, because I suspect the age of assembly dominance is ending. The age of human influence is just beginning, and God help us all when they really get started. 6 months later, the assembly voted on a proposal to ban mechanical projectile weapons. It failed by a wide margin. 43 member species voted against the ban, many citing humanity's arguments about independence and self-determination. The humans had won not through military might but through ideas that resonated with species who had grown tired of assembly control. Eleli Necros was appointed as humanity's first full ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. Her first official act was to propose a new treaty framework that emphasized individual rights over collective control. It was revolutionary, controversial, and gaining support faster than anyone had predicted. I attended her inauguration ceremony, watching as she took her oath of office with a ceremonial bow strapped to her back. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. Humanity had arrived at the galactic table, and they had brought their weapons with them, not in defiance of civilization, but as proof that civilization could exist without sacrificing strength, independence, or the fundamental right to self-defense. The galaxy was changing, and the humans, with their steel and string, their compound bows and carbon fiber arrows, were leading that change, whether we liked it or not. As I watched Elena accept the ceremonial seal of ambassadorship, I realized something profound. The assembly had outlawed guns, hoping to create a more peaceful galaxy. Instead, they had simply reminded humanity why their species had survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Before inventing firearms, they had reminded them that weapons were just tools, but the true danger came from the minds that wielded them. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy with steel bows that pierced armor, but their most powerful weapon had always been their refusal to be controlled, their creativity in the face of restriction, and their absolute determination to remain free. The age of guns had ended. The age of human ingenuity had just begun, and the galaxy would never underestimate them.